So today's topic is about what does cognitive well-being in elderly mean? How do we, when we talk about cognition, we're talking about our faculties of thinking. We're looking at how does our brain really start changing as we age? What do we really need to do? So today's topic is about what does cognitive well-being in elderly mean? How do we, when we talk about cognition, we're talking about our faculties of thinking. We're looking at how does our brain really start changing as we age? What do we really need to do? Entering a room and forgetting why. Recalling names is a challenge. Putting, like a story together, it's like feels a little complicated. And sometimes they confuse us. Sometimes they make us more anxious and worried, which again is not good for us. How do we move from just being older to becoming wiser? Wisdom is a choice. Wisdom is not automatic. And what can we do proactively to keep our brain healthy and active? I will just add one more thing to my introduction. The fact that while my major work experience has been in organizations, this part, which I'm talking about, the cognitive well-being in elderly, has started like a passion project for me. With my parents coming to a certain age, well, I'm at a tender young age of 54. So my parents are in their 80s and middle 80s and beginning of the 80s, my mom and dad. And I started realizing about 10 years ago that there were some major changes happening with them that started concerning me about their well-being in general. So over the last 10 years, a lot of things that I have done to help them and seen the results of that, as well as helping other friends and their parents in the space, made it something like, I kind of kept a diary and I thought that this is something I would love to share with people and see how we all can together be healthier and live well as we age. So today's topic is about what does cognitive well-being in elderly mean? How do we, when we talk about cognition, we're talking about our faculties of thinking. We're looking at how does our brain really start changing as we age? What do we really need to do? So we want to look at what is cognitive aging and what is its impact on our everyday life. How do we want to take control of that? How do we know whether there is a risk, whether it's like, aging means slowing down? And I think those of you who have seen that in others or who are in that age group know those little changes. And sometimes they confuse us. Sometimes they make us more anxious and worried, which again is not good for us. How do we recognize, reduce them, and what can we do proactively to keep our brain healthy and active? Okay, so let's start with this little quick activity. If you have a pen and paper, feel free to write down those answers. Otherwise, just keep them in mind and go through the iterations that I'm going to take you through. Okay, my question to you, what do you remember? We're going to play this game. Try to recall everything that you've done since morning today. Very quickly go through. Notice how fast you're able to recall, like from the time you woke up till now. Now go back a day before. What did you have for lunch yesterday? Now think about 3 days back. Let's be specific. Get down to maybe say a Wednesday. What were you doing that day? Now going back to Monday. What were you doing on Monday? What was happening with you? Notice if you're taking longer and longer time to recall the data. Now, let me hear some responses. You can post your responses in the chat box, or you can unmute and quickly answer in a second. How easy was it to access the immediate data, which is from today morning? And how difficult was it to kind of move back into Wednesday and Mondays? And how quick are you to unmute and respond or type or chat or look at where is the chat? Yes. Okay. So it is kind of tougher to recall something which has happened. Now, if I ask you to remember something like, say, a day, what did your school uniform look like? What does your, the childhood home look like? And you'll notice that immediately and instantly an image pops up. It's not that difficult to remember and recall, is it? So, what we want to understand is why these differences? What is really happening? One is that when I'm asking you to remember what happened yesterday, today, we're kind of asking your working memory and top of the line, what's really happening in the last few days, and how much of attention have you paid to those activities? Compared to when you were much younger, one is the number of times, the number of years you've spent in the same environment, and how deeply it has become encoded. So, a lot of times when we are talking about recalling or remembering, which is one of the things that people talk about memory and aging, is that are we really encoding or remembering information in the same way? Are we even paying attention and noticing in the same way? So you'll know that when we were younger, when we are children, we are excited about just about everything in life. So everything is new, right? From a new pencil, a new color, to a new kind of eraser, to new people that we meet. It's like the brain is paying intense attention and recording everything. Now, as we grow older, we start relying on this database that has been created, and sometimes consciously we aren't even making note of things. So, this process of retaining and recalling kind of becomes limited as we grow older to the activities that we do, to the groups of people, and to the kind of things that we do. And that's one of the things that you want to keep in mind about brain. So the next slide. So what do we talk when we talk about mental health, well-being, cognitive aging, or brain health? What do we want to know? There are these three main areas. One is how you think, feel, learn, remember, recall, which we just talked about. The second is the emotional functions. How do you interpret and respond to emotions? It changes over time. When you're younger, sometimes you tend to access emotions more easily. You're more volatile, you react more. And as you grow older, you tend to notice a slight dulling in the emotions as well. Dulling meaning not that you don't feel, but you've learned how to regulate them and manage them. And that's the positive side. And on the negative side, you're probably suppressing them and you've kind of blunted them so you don't feel them anymore. So, where the positive part, while it's helpful, the negative doesn't do much for your brain health. The third is the physical function. How well do you move, balance, your hand coordination, the eye coordination, your physical balance, and you know that those motor functions also change with aging. And the sensations of touching and feeling and controlling the fine motor skills, part of it. Now, all of these factors are very critical to your brain health. While a lot has changed in the world around us, and the internet and everything has made things like that quick for us, information is available just about on everything that you want to access. The fact is that our brain still operates in the old time, age, fashion, and it doesn't work with the way the speed that the technology works. And when I say that, I don't mean to say that your brain can't be fast. It is just that it needs its own processing speed to mature, to grow, for the functions to happen. Our body processes aren't as upgraded as the rest of the world in the speed. So, what do we need to do? We need to learn to identify factors that can keep our brain health really, really strong. And when we say brain health strong, why do you think, the next slide, please? Why, what do you think are these changes like? What do you think is the impact of these cognitive thinking changes? It's interestingly today, while the topic says 60 plus, the fact is that today the brain health is deteriorating even in as young as 30-year-olds. And one of the key reasons is that the brain doesn't engage in the same way as it was in the earlier times. But let me ask you this question. Can I hear some quick responses as to what does this change look like on an everyday basis? Why is it important to manage and retain your cognitive health? Quick thoughts while I gulp a glass. Yeah. Yeah, I know it looks a bit scary, absolutely, because it feels so unfamiliar. And it feels like you're losing control of of things. And it's kind of fearful for the kind of information that's available outside. It's kind of scary. It looks like growing old is a very scary place, but it need not be. Of course, information upsurge, and I can't even begin to tell you the challenges with that. We know about things that we're never going to use in our life, and that probably has no relevance to our lifestyle, but we know about it. There's so much of information. Yes, entering a room and forgetting why. By the way, Vasudha, this is happening with 20-year-olds as well, because the attention span is gone and you're on one thing and then you're on the next thing in the next moment, and we aren't using our brain in the same way that it used to be. Recalling names immediately, yes, recalling names is a challenge. Putting, like a story together, it's like feels a little complicated. By the way, recalling names is a challenge with me. I guess it's been forever, but we all have some of these. Forgetting names of relatives and friends. One thing which happens often is that you remember a face and you kind of see that face in your head, and you're like, that person, and it just doesn't come. The thing is, the more we stress about it, the more difficult it becomes. There is normal aging, and that this is all a part of it. Do we really get worried if 6-month-old baby loses the bowel control and does shushu? No, it's expected. He or she is a baby. It doesn't know. It doesn't yet have that control. When you're in school and you're a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old just learning the tables, and you remember and you forget, expected. You're just starting to learn it. Likewise, age appropriateness is something that we've got to learn. And what is age appropriateness when it comes to aging and memory is that occasional forgetfulness is absolutely fine. I forgot where my keys are. I forgot names. I can recall them later, or somebody tells me, oh, you know what, this is how it is, and you remember it. That's absolutely normal. But if your daily life is getting affected, that is, you spoke to somebody and you agreed to something and you had a conversation, and the very next day you can't remember, or you repeat questions and information as people grow older, that is a decline which is more troubling, because their everyday life is getting affected. Okay, learning new things, of course it takes longer. It's like, why do they say that old age is like going back to your childhood? Because your speed goes down, that's all. But you're much wiser, huh? You don't lose everything when you're at that age, but slowly you are taking much more time to process. Technology becomes scary for a lot of people, while I must say that one of the fallouts of COVID is that a lot of people who were scared of technology actually got onto technology, because that was the only means available, whether it was video calls or chatting and typing, learning all of that. But once you learn, it stays. But when you look at it from the risky part, what you need to know is, you need to worry if you are trying to learn and you still can't. You're just not able to do it. Then you need to probably consult somebody. Language is, I just wanted to say this thing to you, but I can't remember the tip of the tongue moments. Increase. Absolutely fine. Don't worry. That's the medal you earn for living up to the age that you're living up to. But if you're constantly struggling and getting irritated and you can't find words, and if you're listening to people and you can't follow conversation, like you are not either able to give attention, or you listen to the whole thing but you're not able to get the meaning, right? Then start worrying. Attention, multitasking is harder. I guess sometimes it's harder for a lot of people even when they're younger. But don't try to. In fact, enjoy the slower pace, because the slower pace is actually going to keep you healthier. So don't try to multitask, stay focused, which is different from being distracted all the time, not even able to finish your task. Sometimes people forget their plate and meal and half finished food and walk. Now that's a concern. If you're taking longer to plan a trip or a meeting, but you can still do it with a little struggle and help, fine. If you have total confusion, you can't make sense of what people are saying, even like familiar tasks like, paying for your purchases while cooking, losing track of the ingredients and the sequence in which they go, you probably need a little more activity and attention. Okay. Orientation, where am I? What place is it? What time is it? Sometimes forgetting days and dates. It's okay. In fact, it's good sometimes to lose yourself and just exist. But if it is that you find yourself in your familiar supermarket and standing and wondering where is the exit, places which you regularly go to don't seem like they're comfortable, it's something to probably check. And if you can find that yourself rather than wait for it to become more noticeable by others, the sooner you catch it, the more you can do to manage it better. Okay. Emotional social functioning, you want to avoid some gatherings because you're feeling exhausted, because you feel that you need a little break, you've had a little grief episode or whatever, that's fine. But constantly staying away, withdrawing from the people, mood changes and personality changes are something which need attention. If your daily life is intact, overall, independence, your self management in terms of your basic life functions is good, and your basic complex tasks of every day, of maintaining your routine, if you're managing with aging, absolutely fine. You're doing great in spite of all the other aspects that we've spoken about. But if you feel that I cannot move ahead in my activity without someone telling me and somebody doing the thinking for me, then your brain's kind of giving away its CEO position to someone else and something else. A lot of times in our culture, we encourage our adults, older adults, to step away from managing things and say, okay, now you've done enough in life, now take a back seat, and we, the children, we'll handle everything. And many times it's the older people who say that I've been doing this all my life. Now just give me a break, take charge. I don't want to think, I don't want to make decisions, and I don't want to be involved. The third situation that comes up is with the changes in technology and the world around us. If you haven't kept yourself abreast, it's scary, and you'd rather not make those decisions like getting OTPs or handling bank and banking details. And so you develop, start restricting your world. And that's the first step to cognitive decline. That's the first step to the brain starting to go into the slumber mode. Using too much of technology, watching a lot of YouTube or videos or information, however good it may be, is not the best way to keep your brain active. Now, some of you might notice that as you're listening to me, your mind is wandering, and some of you might actually be doing some other things. That's another challenge that we have, which is keeping our attention and engaging. So, what can we really do? Engage with the content if you have to watch YouTube. Pause it, think, reflect, write some questions, thoughts. And that's why in this webinar or in any webinar that you attend, it's important for you to make your notes or put your thoughts or respond, because you're not answering me. You're not telling me the answer. You're engaging your brain. You're keeping it active and alert, right? And, so the thing is, the mind does wander. That's the nature of mind. And it is not very helpful that today, with the shorter reels and the smaller text and one line, our attention spans is down to, seconds. But it's our job to keep our brain engaged. Within the first 2, 3 minutes of watching something, if you find yourself wandering away, bring your mind back. And if it doesn't come back, switch off that activity. Please don't switch off your car while driving if your mind is wandering, or any critical activity that you are onto. This is only when you're doing that mindless scrolling, or when you're talking to somebody and you find that you can't keep yourself focused on it, right? So the summary of that is that aging is inevitable. Changes are absolutely normal. You will have slower functioning, but it is intact. My dad is 85, and sometimes I have to, when I'm talking to him, I have to tell him the same thing about 2 or 3 times. But when I was 3 year old, he probably told me 30 times certain things. So that's absolutely fine. But once he hears it and he gets it, it's just that so much easy, because he just works around it. He practices it enough, whether it's technology or whatever, banking functions or share trading and anything that he wants to learn. Once it's there, it's learned. But what you need to look at is decline, which is what I noticed in him a lot. The reason I got so interested in this whole thing is it started with my parents. And it started, they live alone. I mean, both live by themselves in Hyderabad. My brother's in Mumbai. And they manage their everyday life routine great. They're I mean, model parents in that sense. They do their yoga, they do their active stuff, manage their health and everything well. But the challenge with them was that their everyday life had become so sedentary and relaxed, and that they, anytime it was about traveling or doing something new, I found them wanting to not join us, or not want to do things. So it started as an experiment by helping them play some games or developing memory lists, and how can they manage their everyday tasks, like remembering what to buy and do things much better, and still be independent and not feel like, oh, I need someone, otherwise I can't function. How can they maintain their independence, self management, self care, and the self reliance longer? And with the activities, I found completely a new person emerging with both of them. And that's what led me to think that this is an information that I would love to share with everybody, that these are not secrets. These are some very common, easily available things that you can do. We all know about exercise and diet, but do we really pay attention to social connection? Do we form those kind of committed groups? Do we manage stress? And most importantly, do we have enough mental stimulation? You aren't in the hot seat anymore of life, where you're making 20 decisions a day or a minute. I don't know what you live like, but you're coming down to lesser and lesser and lesser decisions, and lesser and lesser and lesser problem solving. And so the mental connections that you form, the wisdom that you gained, slowly starts rusting. And that's where you want to kind of make an improvement in and be able to see how you do that, right? Yeah, I know. Yeah, of course. The hard one, it feels difficult right now. And one of the things that you could do in when I'm reading the chat is Sudoku. If you're finding it difficult, start checking whether you're getting too anxious or worried about the fact that you can't do, right? Start looking at it as from a problem solving angle. Where am I getting stuck? What kind of challenges am I facing? What do I really need to do to solve this problem? Now, that's an activity that will actually help the brain to figure out a solution, and it'll help your brain. If you really can't do after everything, well, accept it gracefully. That's a part of aging. And then find out another new activity that you can do better than this. And that's what is a great solution for it. Let's do this quick game. So the activity is going to be for 5 minutes. So it's called the name game, and it's a very simple activity. Here are the rules. The person whose name starts with A, let's say if there are two people, if your name starts with A, then of course the name with AA or AB. Do you know, does everybody know how to decide the name? Otherwise, the person with the name starting with B or C, whichever is the first alphabet, is the leader of the group. Okay, so that's the first decision your group will make. Who's going to be the group leader? The rules are, the person whose name starts with A. Suppose if there are two people with A, then AA, AB, or AC, you decide on that. The third is, if it's not alphabet A, then B, C, D, whichever is the first alphabet, that's the group leader. That person will start. It's a very simple game. I'm sure you all know this. Will take a name of a country, a city, a locality. Okay, so it's a country could be like, say, India. A city could be like Hyderabad. A locality could be like Begumpet or anything like that. Any of these three categories are allowed. So let's say the person starts with India. India ends with A. So the next person, now the leader will decide the sequence and probably assign numbers to everybody, who, how many numbers are there in your room. So let's say the leader assigns numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. So the number 1 will say another name of a country, a city, or a locality starting with, I said India, so ending with A. That person will say a name with A. The third person will then use the ending letter of the second one. So if it's India, let's say I said Africa, again A. So I say, oh my God, now all the names coming in my head are beginning with A. But do you get the series sequence? That's all you have to do. Now, till you come back from the breakout room, you're going to continue playing this game. Now, what to do in case somebody forgets or doesn't get a name? Don't notice what's going on in you when you're not able to get a name, and you can just say pass to the next person who will then add on to the name. It takes longer to understand. Visual can help because auditory is sometimes like the brain is like too much of processing, but definitely yes. I'm sorry, I can't see your name. I just see you as guest, but yes, it can help. Visual can help with aging. All right. So those of you who are back, let me ask you, did you get a sense of the game? And tell me notice how you're feeling right now. What's the energy? What would you feel something happening? Is there some energy? Is there any difference or no? Okay. Excitement, happiness. Just notice, just take a moment right now as I speak. Just close your eyes and notice what's happening in the body before the game, after the game. Now, this game, yeah, you feel alert, you feel active. Now, this is a game you can play at home. It's one of our favorite games at home. And I tell you, the names my dad and mom come up with, I have to look up on the phone to look, whether it's really something. Like I remember my dad telling some name of some small town, and I'm like, no, this can't be. And he's like, no, 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 this was a town. This was before independence. This is what it was called. And it was the small gauge train used to go there in that place. Like, wow, you remember all these details, right? And I looked up, and yes, it was some name which was really true. One of the things that I've started doing is we put together these groups, and I have these games of older people where you are not just, there is a difference between just playing and playing with an intention of creating some value for your own brain and for yourself. Okay. Now, socializing is great. It's a very, very wonderful way to keep yourself involved and connected. It's a great insulation for your brain. It's a brain protection strategy, as well as gives you so much of fun. But anything which has you really make the effort is where the brain is now actually doing the work. So even just playing by yourself is good, but when you play a game like this together, there is a different sense of engagement that comes in. Yes, of course, Antakshari gives you great joy and lots of songs to remember and sing along with as well. Now, this is one of the games that you could do. Likewise, you have so many other memory games and things which could be utilized. So here are the two key things that you have to know about yourself as you're aging and what you want to focus on. We have these two brain systems. One of them is called the reflexive system, meaning that we don't really have to think about it. It's like you're walking and you don't even notice, but somewhere in the periphery, you notice something is lying, you just step aside, you keep walking. It's fast, it's instinctive, it is something which has got wired, it is with your survival, linked with your survival, and you don't really think, like say a truck is coming at you at full speed, you're not going to stand and think, okay, what is the speed of this truck? Do you think it's going to hit and kill me? No, you just see it coming fast, and before you even know, you are out of the harm's way. You've taken action, you've jumped aside like you've never jumped before, and then you wonder, like, how did I even come here? Because it's beyond your conscious awareness, the reflexive processing. Now, as we grow older, a lot more things go into reflexive processing, like our habits, our routines. And that's another reason. And by the way, as we grow older, this brain stays strong and it gets stronger with age. That's why we prefer the same routines. We don't like if our things are moved away. Emotional memory, which is where, like good or bad experiences, things about our childhood, about when we were raising children, and we remember stories of success that we might have had, they just stay intact in our brain. The skills like riding, swimming, anything that you worked at, let's say you were, let's say anything that you have gained your expertise in over years, whether it stays inside you. You can just do it without having much trouble. As you age, actually, you improve on emotional balance. Like you're no longer startled by the same things that as a child or a younger person you were. You're no longer triggered in the same way. That is if you're maturing and growing in the right way. But this reflexive brain is like the rabbit. Even before the question is said fully, tuck, 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 the answers start coming to you. That's unconscious and it's uncontrollable. It's automatic. The second part is the reflective brain, which is slower. It's more deliberate. It's like, let's take a step back and think what's happening here right now. It's higher order thinking, like decision making, problem solving. It's where wisdom can be harnessed. And that is the part of the brain, sadly, which starts declining with age. And therefore, we might find that we become rigid. We don't like change. We hear new things and we dismiss them. We don't want to learn new systems. We're very happy with what the world was and we just want to stay that way because that feels safe. But that's really not very helpful for us. What we need to do is to now make an effort to keep this active. When we are younger, the work and life demands from us keeps this reflective brain, well, hopefully active, and we just get by. But as we get older, we don't solve problems, we don't make many decisions. Our working memory is weaker, obviously, because we aren't using it as much. We aren't engaged with life. We aren't engaged with our everyday living. So we become more and more rigid and closed if we don't use this brain. What do we need to do then? We need to play games which keep us happy, because remember, emotions and brains and thinking, they are also connected. If we are feeling frustrated with our everyday life, if we are irritated with our own self because we aren't as fast anymore, if we are scared about aging, if we are feeling clueless about the world we are in, then that emotion is creating its own problem in the body, because emotion is linked to physiology, is linked to our stress hormones, and that's creating disturbance. So it's important to manage emotions as well. So how do we do that? No, okay. So we do this by looking at how do we move from just being older to becoming wiser. Wisdom is a choice. Wisdom is not automatic. So the younger brain, when you're younger, it's kind of more, quicker, and you're moving fast and you're doing things. But as you're growing older, you want to start harnessing the wisdom. And that happens when you think about your thinking. You learn about reflecting. So what I shared earlier, let's say for this person who was sharing about the Sudoku problem, I'm not able to get it. Notice, okay, what's happening to me? Oh, I'm getting anxious because I can't solve the problems like before. I'm getting scared. I'm worried. Okay, I want to move away from that because that's not helping me, even if I'm solving Sudoku. Because the emotions are connected to your physiology. Anxiety and worry create stress. Stress releases the wrong stress hormones, which is not for my good for my physical health. And neither am I getting better with it. So I want to look at it and say, okay, so now this is the challenge I'm facing right now. So what knowledge? What can I do? How can I take a step back? How can I solve this problem? Who can I talk to? Who can I connect with? Who can help me with this? And sometimes when there are changes that happen, which we cannot do anything about. And my dad deals with myasthenia gravis. So for a long period of time, he couldn't eat solid food. And he was just living on soups and dals and liquid foods. And it meant that he was really slowly withdrawing and not wanting to come out and go with us and socialize, because he felt he's going to hold us back and, he can't eat anything. Till we made the changes and we worked through that to understanding, accepting this is a condition which isn't changing. It's never going away from now till the end of life. And gratitude for what you can still do, to not stopping till we find a solution that we need. So for about 7 years, from 2015 till 23, no, that's more than 7, 8 years, he was just on liquid diet, but he was doing his yoga. He was going everywhere. We were holidaying. We did whatever we needed to do to make sure that he was not getting out from the center stage of life. To today, when we were able to find a new doctor who could change the medication, to him starting to eat little foods again after 8 years and enjoying that space. It is through these transitions, it is through this wisdom, it is through Use your wisdom and intuition that you have gained, regulate your emotions, don't become rigid, don't become pessimistic, don't become this is what there is. There is a solution to every problem in life. That's it. Some problems you have to accept and find alternate ways to work around it. Some problems you can just solve and get over it, right? So that's the thing that you want to keep in mind. And now let me open it to question answers and listen to you. But the reflective system is trainable. That's what we worked with when I said play this particular game. All right. So puzzles, exercise, mindfulness, meditation, you know all the answers. But it is which one do you need? And that's where the expertise or the opinion of a professional can be valuable for you. But otherwise, if you are functional and managing your routine, even though you're slower, you're doing great. If you find yourself frustrated and emotions are bothering you, take help, because that emotional charge creates a disturbance which will ultimately start like pickling your brain in stress hormones, and that isn't really very helpful.